On April 1, 1988, 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley left her friend's home in Fort Wayne, Indiana, to retrieve her umbrella. It was a Friday afternoon, Good Friday, and the weather was wet. April was walking alone, intending to return to her friend's house after picking up the umbrella. At approximately 3:00 p.m., she vanished along Hoagland Avenue. Her family quickly became concerned. When April failed to return for dinner, her mother reported her missing later that evening. Law enforcement responded swiftly. Over the next 24 hours, a large-scale search operation was launched. More than 250 officers from the Fort Wayne Police Department and over 50 civilian volunteers participated in the search. Helicopters, dogs, and door-to-door inquiries covered the neighborhood and surrounding areas. A critical tip came from local witnesses who reported seeing a blue pickup truck in the area at the time of April's disappearance. Several recalled seeing a white male in his 30s with sandy blonde hair, possibly forcing a young girl matching April's description into the vehicle. Despite these accounts, the leads did not produce an immediate suspect. The community, stunned and frightened, organized quickly. April's photograph was circulated across local news stations, printed on flyers and displayed in store windows. Schools heightened safety protocols, and parents kept their children indoors. April was well known in her neighborhood. Described by family and teachers as bright, friendly, and trusting, she was in the 3rd grade and liked to play with dolls and ride her bicycle. Her sudden disappearance sent shockwaves through Fort Wayne, a city unaccustomed to such crimes against children. The first hours after a child goes missing are considered the most critical. For April Tinsley, they passed without a break in the case. By nightfall, the search had become a race against time. 3 days after April Tinsley went missing, a grim discovery ended the search. On April 4, 1988, Easter Monday, her body was found in a ditch along a rural road in DeKalb County, about 20 miles northeast of Fort Wayne. A jogger spotted the body in the early morning hours near Spencerville Road, partially hidden by debris and vegetation. The DeKalb County Sheriff's Department quickly secured the scene. Identification was confirmed through dental records and personal items. It was April. She had been sexually assaulted and murdered. The autopsy revealed that she died by asphyxiation and had likely been killed shortly after her abduction. Investigators found one critical piece of evidence: a used condom near the body. DNA was extracted and preserved, an unusual advantage at the time, as DNA analysis was still an emerging forensic technique. Law enforcement immediately suspected that the crime had a sexual motive and was premeditated. The location of the body suggested the killer had knowledge of the area. The disposal site was secluded but accessible by road, surrounded by farmland and woods. There were no witnesses. Tire tracks and partial footprints were noted but led nowhere. The public was devastated. The murder of an 8-year-old, following such a visible search effort, left the city shaken. Local media covered the story extensively. Authorities promised they would not rest until the killer was caught. In the days following the discovery, police intensified efforts to identify the blue truck and its driver, releasing composite sketches based on earlier witness descriptions. Hundreds of tips poured in, but none led to a viable suspect. The case shifted from a missing person investigation to a homicide. Despite the recovery of DNA, the trail began to grow cold. April's killer had vanished. 2 years after the murder of April Tinsley, an unexpected and chilling development occurred. On May 21, 1990, a disturbing message was discovered scrawled in crayon on the wall of a barn in Fort Wayne. The writing appeared to be a confession, referencing April by name. It read in part, "I kill 8-year-old April Marie Tinsley. I will kill again." The author also claimed responsibility for the 1988 murder and indicated intent to strike again. The message stunned law enforcement. It provided specific details about the crime that had not been made public, convincing investigators it may have been written by April's killer or someone with close knowledge of the case. The location of the barn was in proximity to where April had been abducted, suggesting the writer was familiar with the area. Forensic investigators examined the message, which was written in large, childlike handwriting using a crayon. Unfortunately, no physical evidence, such as fingerprints or fibers, could be recovered. Despite the threatening tone, no immediate follow-up crimes were linked to the message. The case took a darker turn. The note's appearance marked a shift in the killer's behavior, from someone who had initially vanished after the crime to someone now taunting investigators and the public. The message added a psychological layer to the investigation, showing signs of manipulation and control. Although the case remained unsolved, the barn message re-energized media attention and reminded the community that April's killer had not been caught and may still be watching. In 2004, the April Tinsley case took another disturbing turn. After more than a decade of silence following the 1990 barn message, the individual believed to be her killer resurfaced. This time, the taunts were not anonymous graffiti, but carefully prepared letters left for young girls in the Fort Wayne area. Over the course of several months, 4 notes were discovered. Each was placed in a plastic bag alongside used condoms and Polaroid photographs. The packages were left in mailboxes or on bicycles belonging to preteen girls. The letters included references to April's murder and graphic sexual language. One note claimed, "I am the same person that kidnapped, raped, and killed April Tinsley." The writer warned the recipient that they could be next. These new communications were deeply unsettling for both law enforcement and the community. The content, tone, and timing bore similarities to the 1990 barn message, strongly suggesting they were authored by the same person. The explicit nature of the materials indicated a continued fixation on young girls and a desire to instill fear. Forensic investigators collected the condoms and envelopes for DNA testing. Remarkably, DNA extracted from these 2004 items matched the DNA found on April's underwear in 1988, definitively linking the notes to her killer. However, the DNA profile still did not match anyone in the National CODIS database, leaving the case unresolved. The reemergence of the killer after so many years revealed a methodical, calculating individual who maintained a long-term psychological connection to the original crime. The case gained renewed media coverage, and investigators appealed to the public for help. Despite the confirmed DNA match, the identity of the suspect remained unknown. These letters marked a major turning point, reigniting urgency in the search for April's killer. Despite matching DNA from the 2004 notes and the 1988 crime scene, investigators had no name for the suspect. His profile did not exist in CODIS, the National Criminal Database. For years, detectives waited for a breakthrough that would finally connect the evidence to an identity. That breakthrough came in 2018, when law enforcement turned to a relatively new investigative tool, genetic genealogy. This technique had recently been used to solve other cold cases, most notably the Golden State Killer case. It involved using crime scene DNA to generate a genetic profile, and then uploading it to public genealogy databases to identify possible relatives. In April 2018, the Fort Wayne Police Department partnered with Paraben Nanolabs, a company specializing in genetic analysis. Paraben used DNA from the crime scene to create a genealogical profile and began mapping family trees. The process did not yield an immediate result but slowly narrowed down potential matches through distant relatives. After extensive family tree building, investigators identified 2 brothers as possible suspects. One of them, John D. Miller, lived in Grabble, Indiana, just 30 minutes from Fort Wayne. He had lived in the area at the time of April's murder and fit the general age profile investigators had long theorized. To confirm the match, law enforcement placed Miller under surveillance. In July 2018, they collected used trash from his property, including a used condom. DNA analysis of this discarded item produced a match with the DNA found on April's underwear and the 2004 taunting notes. This marked the end of a 30-year mystery. The same DNA had now linked Miller to multiple critical pieces of physical evidence across decades. For the first time, April's family and the community were presented with a name behind the haunting case. On July 15, 2018, just days after DNA from a discarded item linked him to April Tinsley's murder, law enforcement officers approached John D. Miller at his mobile home in Grabble, Indiana. The arrest came after decades of frustration and stalled leads. For investigators, it was the culmination of years of persistence, bolstered by advancements in DNA technology and genetic genealogy. When questioned, Miller quickly admitted his involvement. He confessed to abducting April on April 1, 1988, after spotting her walking alone. He told police that he took her to his trailer, where he sexually assaulted her. According to his statement, he held her captive for several hours before finally strangling her. After the murder, he claimed to have driven her body to a ditch in rural DeKalb County, where she was later found. Miller's confession also included admissions about the taunting notes and used condoms left near the crime scene in 2004. He described feeling compelled to remind people of what he had done, a disturbing detail that confirmed what investigators had suspected for years, that the same man had committed the crime and continued to taunt the community for decades. The arrest of Miller stunned the public. He had no significant criminal record and lived a quiet, reclusive life. Neighbors described him as strange but unremarkable. Despite living near the crime scene all these years, he had never surfaced as a serious suspect. With his confession and the DNA evidence, Miller was formally charged with murder, rape, and child molestation. Following his arrest and confession, John D. Miller was formally charged with murder, child molestation, and criminal confinement in the 1988 killing of 8-year-old April Tinsley. His arrest brought closure to a case that had haunted the Fort Wayne community for 3 decades. Despite the overwhelming DNA evidence and his own confession, the case proceeded through the legal system with careful attention to due process. Miller initially pleaded not guilty, but later changed his plea as part of an agreement with prosecutors. On December 21, 2018, he pleaded guilty to murder and child molesting in Allen Superior Court. This decision meant that the case would not go to trial, sparing April's family from reliving the traumatic details in a courtroom. It also allowed the court to move directly to sentencing. During the sentencing hearing, prosecutors detailed the disturbing nature of the crime, the prolonged trauma inflicted on the community, and the years of fear stoked by Miller's anonymous threats. The court heard about April's character, her love of school and family, and the deep grief experienced by those who had waited so long for justice. The judge sentenced Miller to 80 years in prison, 50 years for murder and 30 years for child molestation, to be served consecutively. Given his age at sentencing, 59 years old, Miller was not expected to ever leave prison. The outcome marked the end of one of Indiana's most infamous cold cases. It also highlighted the growing role of genetic genealogy in solving previously unsolvable crimes. For April's family, the sentence delivered a long-awaited measure of accountability. With the case resolved, the focus shifted toward remembering April, not just as a victim, but as a child whose life had left a lasting mark on her community. April Tinsley's murder cast a long shadow over Fort Wayne, Indiana. For 30 years, her unsolved case lingered in the minds of residents, especially those who remembered the yellowing posters, police updates, and chilling notes left by the killer. It wasn't just a crime. It became a symbol of lost innocence and the relentless fear that comes with uncertainty. Parents grew more cautious. Children were reminded not to walk alone. The community changed. Despite the horror, April's memory inspired action. Local residents organized vigils and memorials to honor her life. A dedicated group of law enforcement officers refused to let her case go cold. Over the years, technological advancements gave hope, and when genetic genealogy finally delivered a suspect, it validated decades of effort from investigators and renewed faith in forensic science. April's case also influenced national conversations around cold case investigations. Her story became a turning point that demonstrated how DNA evidence, combined with genealogy tools, could finally catch elusive criminals, even decades later. It highlighted the importance of preserving evidence and opened the door for other families to hope for justice. Beyond the courtroom and headlines, April's legacy lives on in the way the community remembers her. In 2019, a memorial playground was dedicated in her name at a local park, designed as a place where children could safely play, the very thing April had been doing the day she was taken. For many in Fort Wayne, April is more than a victim of a terrible crime. She represents perseverance, community unity, and the power of never giving up on justice. Her life, though tragically short, continues to inspire ongoing efforts to protect children and solve cold cases across the country.